That's awesome, dude.
So it's great. Well, Mr. Shane Wood, Dr. Shane Wood,
Yeah.
welcome to the Homilist.
Well, thanks for having me, man. I really
Yeah,
do appreciate it.
yeah. This is a really cool deal.
Yeah.
Um, I remember my first interaction, actually not interaction with you, but the first time I remember seeing you.
Huh.
You came to Ozark. I had been there maybe a year prior,
Huh.
and you and uh, I don't remember his last name. I think he was from Florida. First name John.
Okay. Yeah, John Hill.
There you go, musician.
Yeah. Yep.
And you came and you sang, and you and him were doing music in chapel one day. And I
Uh-huh.
was like, this freaking guy is talented, like a good voice. And I even remember the song, which is even crazier. Like I
No
remember,
kidding.
yeah, I remember the song. It was the We Are Hungry song.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I don't know why. I was just like, this freaking guy, he just shows up, takes over. Like, check this cat out. So yeah, that was cool. And we had classes together after that. But
Yeah.
you've gone on to do some really cool stuff.
Hmm. Well, I
Um,
appreciate that, man. I mean, sometimes I still feel like I'm that young punk kid that still came into Ozark, and I feel like I'm an imposter in all these different places.
yeah, that's okay though. That's okay. I mean,
I
that's
might have a suit coat on, but I still am a hippie with long hair. So I just make sure. It's like I tell my wife all the time. I say, listen, babe, I will never embarrass you with what I wear in public, but I will hardly ever make you proud. So if we can keep that expectation, we'll
exactly.
both be happy.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, hey, I've got a thing here. Let me show this to you real quick. My 11-year-old daughter, and I'm gonna send you this too. I'm gonna send you a 10 of this. My 11-year-old daughter put together a business this last
Crazy.
year. Yeah, business. She put together a business this last year, and it was the strangest deal. She came in and she said, "Hey, I need to talk to you." And I said, "Okay." And she says, "So I've been on Pinterest," and I'm like, "Sweet." And she's a like she's one of those kind of people. She'll hyper focus on something and then just
Okay.
go get it, exhaust it, throw it away, and just move
Okay.
on. Like she's just,
That's
I mean, just ravenous. Grabs the idea, goes after it, does this thing. Well, she said, "I want to make some. I want to make some beard balm for you."
thanks for that.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Beard balm. And I was like, okay. I was like, and I just try to kind of, like nudge off I'm like, okay, well, put together your ingredient list and then, let me know and we'll scoop it up. It's no big deal. And she
Yeah.
said, already did. Um, I said, like, I'm going to Walmart today, apparently like this is, and she's like, we're going to need, and she starts labeling off all the stuff that we're going to need. And this is how it goes. And we're going to need to order tins. We're going to need to do this and this and this. And I thought, okay, so she makes some and she puts it in this little container. And so I'm like, it's probably going to be garbage, it's probably going to, and I don't know. It's like, she's like, I need these essential oils and I'm like, okay, whatever. Um, so she puts together this stuff and I use it and I'm blown away. Like, this is really
Yeah.
good stuff. Like, I can't believe it. So she put together this company, Brooklyn's Beard Company,
Okay.
and um, it's called Main Wax. So let me show you a close up of what this
The
is.
main wax, yes. Dude, that is
Isn't that
awesome.
crazy? And so here's what's funny. She was talking about the scents. She was like, like she's like, what smells, do boys like? And so I used it and she was like, what smells? And I'm like, this is all right. I said, but you can't really go wrong if something smells like, alcohol or tobacco. People just kind of guys like alcohol, tobacco smells, whether you drink it, which I don't drink, but it,
Sure.
it's still great smells, and
Yeah.
manly smell. And she's like, not strawberry. And I'm like, not strawberry.
Yeah, no.
Watermelon. Like, I ain't down with watermelon. So she puts all this together and she brings it in and I use it. And I'm like, this is awesome. She's like, you think we could sell it? But maybe you can. So long story short, she creates this. She creates an online store on
Mhm.
Etsy And we spent all summer shipping this stuff out all over the place.
Oh my gosh.
Then she expanded the product line to beard oil. And so she went from main wax to beard oil and started selling it. So the main wax is vanilla pipe tobacco, which smells incredible. And then the oil is Poncho and Lefty. You know the song, right? You know,
Right.
yeah. And so it smells like leather and bay rum.
No way.
Yeah. And so
Dude, she's paying for an ad spot right now on the
no,
homilist.
she's not, but she's going to. That's the
Yeah,
truth. She's absolutely
but
going
she knows it or not. This
I'm
is
gonna
the way.
go home and I'm gonna go home and leverage her, and I'm gonna say, listen, you're gonna need to ante up a little bit on this. So anyway, so she's created. So I've got some at the house. I'll pack some up and I'll send it over to you.
Bro, that
can
is
try it.
awesome.
Yeah. Isn't that
Thank
cool?
you so much. Yeah, when 11 years old.
Dude, I'm serious.
What are you producing over there?
I'm serious. Like she just flipped the switch and went to work. I mean, one day she came in, and this is completely off subject. We got so many more important things to talk about.
Oh,
But
no,
one day
you're
she
fine.
walked.
Go ahead.
She says, "Hey, so I've been thinking about this business a little bit, and you think I could sell the business?" We have moved completely out of the realm of anything I know anything about at this
Right.
point. I don't have any idea. But she has. I mean, this shipped out everywhere. I mean, to barbershops.
No way.
The last one, one of the last ones she sent to Sweden. Yeah. Yeah, sent one to Sweden. There's another barbershop. There's three here in town that sell the product.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I mean,
she's no joke.
She's absolutely not a joke at
I
all.
need to have to be like my manager or something, man. That would be.
Yeah, she is good. Like, and it's kind of cool because we kind of had to prep on some stuff like, what's the difference between selling wholesale, or whatever the other term is, and so we bring it in and she has these meetings. And so I do not get involved in those conversations when she goes into the barbershop or the salons. Like, hey, this is on you. Like, I'm not doing it. You're going to do it. Throwing you to the freaking sharks. You're going to. And so she goes in, she's trying to pitch this deal. And so, I mean, like there's three shops here locally that carry the stuff. One of them exclusively carries the oil, and you can't get the oil at the other two.
No way.
What are you doing? So anyway, it's pretty cool. So
Dude,
anyway,
that's
I will
incredible.
send you a 10.
Bro, that's awesome.
First Chronicles, I can't remember the verse. She's got a little verse that she puts on it. First Chronicles, I don't know, 7:12, 8:12. I can't remember what the verse is. It's the one where it talks about the group of people who had faces like lions.
Oh wow.
And so that's written on all of them. And so it's like, be brave. So they're brave, ready for battle, and this and this and this, can handle the sword.
Man.
It's you, buddy.
Yeah, bro.
It's you. It's you. You got a face like a lion. Face like a lion. So anyway, so hey, so we got something important to talk about. You got a book launch in what, 3 days, 4 days?
February 12th. Yeah. So I don't know what today is, but it's Tuesday.
Yeah, 8th, 4 days then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's coming out. I'm honestly, bro, I'm just excited for it to get out. I'm like, I have to keep reminding myself, like, okay, I know I maybe submitted the manuscript a year ago, but people are hearing it for the first time. I need to remember to be excited about it still.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm kind of like your daughter. I'm like, I'll dive into an idea ravenously, and then I'm like, all right, let's sell it. Let's move on to the next
Absolutely
one.
right. Yeah.
Yes,
That's cool.
It comes out on Tuesday. Kindle printed the audiobook. I read the 9 hours of the audiobook, and
Wow.
so yeah, it'll all be out and ready to go on Tuesday.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yep.
So you did the reading yourself?
Yeah. Which had got a little studio set up and spent about a week and a half, because even though it's 9 hours audiobook, it takes like 70 hours to do it or whatever. So, but yeah, read it word for word. And the reason why is because the book is so personal. I wanted people to be able to hear my emotion, because this book in some sense is like reading my journal. How really pouring over the word has well, the way I say it at the beginning, the book's called Between Two Trees. I guess I forgot about that, but the whole point of the book at the beginning was I sat down to write a book on how to read the book of Revelation, and it turned into a book on how the book of Revelation, how the Bible reads me. And so it gets into the mess of my story and my brokenness, and of being molested when I was 6, and learning about racism at a very young age from my grandma, and how the Lord has been unearthing me. But it's also, in some sense, it's also kind of a theology of atonement, because even though it's autobiographical, I'm asking questions like, what happened in the Garden of Eden? What is sin? How bad is it really? Is it just that I went from innocent to guilty, or is it worse than that?
Mm.
And if it is worse than that, then how beautiful is the solution? So it's kind of in the vein of a Eugene Peterson, or even kind of an Augustine's Confessions. It's very autobiographical, but with a theological edge.
I appreciated what Mark Moore uh, wrote about
Mm.
on his little I don't know what you call that little
Kind of endorsement, or
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and talking about like theological poetry or something along those lines. It's a really great line, and I thought, well, Mark Moore's a little prone to the hyperbolic in sense, and I thought, you know. So I dive into the book, and he's 100% right. And posing I am a poet, not a theologian,
Yeah.
and so just by my own assessment, I would be more poet. I would be more poet than I would theologian. And I thought, yeah, listen, it's like trying to say, like, this guy's a painter and a mathematician. Like, come on, like, you don't get to be both. So I dive into the book, and he's 100% right. The racism part was very impacting, very impacting. Not a And I think this is kind of the thing that we're seeing these days, is that people talk about, like, oh, I'm not a racist, or, I don't have any sort of racism about me. And then you kind of dive in a little bit more, and what you find out is like, ugh, like there's some stuff about me that's I'm very, very uneasy with. And the book pointed to some of that stuff. And that was a very moving chapter. Especially the line where if I can spill, can I spill?
Absolutely. Go ahead. No, it's great. Yeah.
Especially the line where you take your son and you hand him to your grandmother.
Yeah.
And how death and the grammar of death began to lose its hold on your grandmother, and years and years and years of racism that just existed. It was never confronted, and then finally it's confronted, but it's confronted with love. Just perfect. Just perfect, man. That was moving. That was very moving.
I appreciate that. And that's where, because, man, it's weird. And I experienced this when I was reading the audiobook. It's reliving those moments. They're beautiful, but man, it's also like, whenever I read that and remember that, I remember more of the taste of the anxiety. Because and I don't know if I put this in the book, but we adopted my son is Black, and my fourth son is Black, from St. Vincent, Grenadine Islands. And I don't think I put this in the book, but I mean, this is my grandma, where we told her 2 years before we adopted my son, first, that we said, we're going to be adopting. First words out of her mouth were, "Tell me it's not a Black baby." And I said, "Well, no, sorry, Grandma, it is. And we don't know if it's gonna be a boy or a girl yet, but that is a stipulation, because we genuinely want to reflect who we feel the heart of God is. And I don't want my family to be monolithic. I want my family to struggle through the gray. I want my family to reflect every tribe, tongue, people, and nation. And I believe that, God put us in America so that we could leverage it to help people all across the world. What I didn't realize, though, is how much going through that process would redeem me. I mean, in so many ways, I don't feel like I did a favor for my son at all. I mean, he is, in many real ways, he has saved me and transformed our family, and he's only 6. But yeah, that moment with my grandma there was a lot of flood there. So it's weird. It's weird even now having a lot of this in print, because I'm like, this is like my journal stuff. This is me wrestling with that moment, going into it, like writing down, saying, I will protect my son. We had to talk to my parents, saying, if she does not embrace him, we will leave. And until she embraces him, we won't see her. And that was never our heart and our goal, but it's like, no, I will protect him.
Yeah.
He deserves to be seen as Robert. And so a couple of years later, it's been fascinating because all of my children teach me different things.
Sure.
Every one of them. So my son Zion turns 15 today, and I handed him the permit book last night. It was like, get reading, homie, and like my daughter Paige, like she taught me that I can't, like whenever she was a little baby, I used to have this game with Zion where I'd put pillows all around him and I'd take a pillow and throw it over his head and he'd fall over and laugh. And I remember the first time I did that to my daughter and there was silence. And I was like, what's going on? I pulled off the pillow and she's got one of those cries where she can't breathe. And I was like, oh gosh, I was like, if I can't play in Roughhouse, I don't know if I know how to be a good dad, but I can't do that with my daughter because that's just not who she is. And then, with my other son, Maddox, it's like his personality is totally different. So the challenges with Robert, I don't even see them as like badges of honor. It just happens to be a conversation in our culture that's more hot button.
Yeah.
But with him, it's like he's playing at the age of 3. He's playing with my wife on the ground, and he looks at her out of nowhere and says, "I don't want my chocolate skin. I want vanilla skin like you," which devastated us. And
Yeah.
Sarah immediately was like, "No, no, 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 no!" Like, and they came to work that day, and she told me, and I got down with him, and I was like, "Buddy," I was like, "Your black skin. If you didn't have that, you wouldn't be Robert." And I love Robert, and God made you this way to express his beauty and his grace and his joy through all of you.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is I have a friend who's a black man, and he lets me ask dumb questions.
Yeah.
I just have to have that. I have to be able to say and do dumb things in a safe place so that he can teach me how to love my son.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him about it, and he goes, "Oh, well, here's the good news. You taught him that." And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you taught him that." And I said, "No, you need to, first of all, why is this good news? And second of all, how in the world did I teach him that?" And he goes, "Well, first, let me tell you why." He goes, "Let me flip those." He goes, "This is how you taught him." He goes, "Shane, it was around Christmas time." He goes, "You have a bunch of Christmas cards hanging up?" I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Black people or white?" I said, "Well, primarily white." He goes, "You and your wife go on a double date. Who shows up at the door? White couple or black couple?" "White." He goes, your kids are watching a show on the TV, or you and your wife are. Who's the hero? White or black?" "White." He goes, "You taught him this. You taught him there was value that you guys had in the white skin and not the black." And he goes, "And now let me tell you why it's good news. Because you can teach him something different." He's like, "You can change the pictures on your wall. You can change the pursuit of different relationships. You can change what's on the screen. And you can communicate to him something you never meant to communicate to him.
Wow.
But you can communicate something different." So my son, in that chapter on racism, there was actually a lot more I wish I could have been able to say, but
Yeah.
It's been transformative. I mean, growing up with a grandma that was racist, but watching my son melt her heart to the point now where she has a picture of him on her refrigerator. And people come in and she's like, "Have you seen my boy?" And it's just, yeah, man. That to me is atonement. That's salvation. That's the gospel.
Yeah. Yeah.
Transformation.
Back to the introduction of the book where you write, I set out to write a book on Revelation and how we read it, and how now I'm back at this place of now this is how it reads me. What else do you pull away from that? How else does it read us and mow through us?
Yeah. One of the things that in the book that I started wrestling with Revelation is a book that Martin Luther wanted to kick out of the canon because he says, "I don't see Jesus in it or the Holy Spirit." And I start wrestling with that, and Revelation's no joke. Revelation's in your face. It looks at you and says, because as Christians, works or deeds for us is a 4-letter word. We're allergic to it. We're always, if we do deeds, we're always quick to say like, "Well, it doesn't save me." And so we have this weird relationship with it. And Revelation just doesn't apologize. Revelation gets in your face and says, "No, you're not doing what I asked you to do. And if you don't, I'm going to remove your lampstand." So I started wrestling with this question of, okay, well, what is salvation then? Because what we pretend is almost like this badge that we get and we never have to let it go. But all of a sudden, Jesus says stuff like, I'm going to remove your lampstand. Or this passage messed me up in Revelation. Revelation chapter 3, verse 20. Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone lets me in, I will come in and eat with them. And what messed me up was I was like, that's written to Christians. That's not evangelistic text. That's written to the Laodiceans. It's like, there is a way I could be saved, but I could be living in such a way that keeps Jesus outside, that doesn't give him permission to come and to be with me. And so what I started to wrestle with the book is, what if the problem is way worse than just I moved from innocent to guilty? Although that is true, what if it's worse than that? What if the problem is so pervasive that the way that I move and think and live and breathe is saturated more with death than life? But then the question starts to flip. But what happens if I've shortened the problem? What if the solution is far greater than I ever imagined?
Mm-hmm.
And Revelation this is the very heartbeat of it. Revelation says this: giving yourself to God, that is the entry point to the journey. That is not the end.
Yeah.
Salvation, bowing your knee to Jesus, coming as you are, broken and messed up and all of your sin, that is the entry point to a journey. And so I tell my students, I say, listen, the cross says, come as you are. The cross also says, and here's the good news, you don't have to stay as you are.
Right.
We get to experience transformation.
Yeah.
And I think that'll sing to our culture.
Yeah.
I think our world is desperate to be someone different,
Yeah.
but we don't even think it's possible. But I think that's the heartbeat of the gospel. And Revelation is emphatic that Christ didn't just come to translate us from one place to another. He came to make, as the old adage says, he came to make dead people alive. Complete transformation.
Yeah, that's good. I spoke with Cy Huffer.
Okay, yeah.
Probably
My minister.
Yeah.
My preacher.
Preacher at your church. Yeah. I spoke with him. And when you talk about culture, I was asking him, because how old are you, Shane?
I'm 36.
Okay. So Cy is what, 29, something like that?
Yeah, right around there. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I think 30 in March. I think he said he'll be 30 in March.
Yeah.
We were talking and he said, so I'm a millennial. And I said, yeah. And I said, that's a good talking point. I said, what do millennials bring to preaching or to ministry that the generations prior to you seem to have dropped on the wayside? Which all you hear, the word millennial itself is such an ugly, nasty. It's been turned into such an ugly, nasty word, because all you ever hear in the news, millennials, it's just, which I turn the news off. I mean, I just refuse, but you cannot stop catching these bits and pieces, everybody wants to gripe about, the millennials, this. I said, what do the millennials bring to this? And this was his phrase. And I loved it. And he was so right. He said, we're not scared.
Mm-hmm.
He said, we showed up into a world that is so twisted and weird. He said, it's been falling apart since we got here. He said, we're not in a panic. You are.
Yeah.
Like your people, like your generation. You are in a panic. You're the ones that look at, oh, what's going to happen if this happens? What's going to happen if this happens? He said, we're looking at it like, it's no big deal. Like, it's been broken since we got here. As far as we know, this is normal, And
no, that's really insightful.
It is, isn't it? And you probably see the same thing with your 15-year-old. There's a different take on life that he understands and sees things in a completely different light. I have a 15-year-old daughter, and she has this ability to just, her acceptance of things almost puts me on edge, because it's like, we grew up in a different time, and she's like, Dad, like, calm down. It's not a big deal. I'm like, it's a big deal. Like, is it not a big deal? I don't know if it is. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. What do you see? What do you see that the millennials are bringing into preaching, into ministry, into culture? And when I say millennials, I don't just mean, the typical phrase of, the social justice warriors that are falling apart everywhere. I mean, believers that fall into this generation called millennials, and what are they bringing in? What are they bringing that you just are moved by? Because you're with students all the time.
Yeah. I actually, I was preaching at church this past weekend and we had a question and answer time. And one of the people asked, they said, when you look into the faces of the people, the students that are in your classes, what do you see? And without even blinking, I initially said, hope.
Mm.
They inspire me because they're number one, they're not afraid of the chaos. I didn't say that. I'm adding that from now on. Yeah. That's dead on.
Yeah.
But number two, they're also just not as worried about pulling all the skeletons out for everybody to see. Yeah. Like truthfully, what they bring that I honestly, my generation struggles with, and the generations beyond me struggle with is it's not the buzzword authenticity. There's a raw vulnerability to them that they are attracted to, that when they see what they hunger and thirst for is something that is real, something that is tangible, transformative. So I got bored a couple of years ago with trying to measure my own self-disclosure in preaching. I just got bored. I was just like, no, I'm done. Yeah. I'm not going to worry about it anymore. And I'm just going to let it fly. This is, I was molested when I was 6. I actually was angry this past week with God, and here's the 4 reasons why. And be honest, I'm preaching the sermon and I still think I'm right. And so I'm waiting for him to tell me how I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I found is that there is a connection that I have with this generation, but it's not because I'm doing anything like preaching wise. It's because they're going, okay, I don't even know that I agree with you, Shane, but at least I know we can talk and you're not going to pretend. Yeah. You're not going to hide from the tough questions. You're actually going to ask them before me. Because I genuinely believe, I had a student come to me the other day and she was like, I'm really wrestling with, a particular couple of different questions about even God and faith. And I just looked at her and I said, that's awesome. And she goes, well, no, I want to know my answers. And I said, why in the world would I give you the answers and cut out the tension? Yeah. I said, it's the tension where stuff can be produced. I said, no, you need to wrestle. Now, I said, what I'm not going to let you do is to fly off the rails. But the worst thing I could do is to short circuit the greatest gift God's given you. And that is what he gave Jacob on the river Jabbok, to wrestle with him. Yeah. No, when you wrestle with God all night long, it ends with you realizing who you are and him giving you a new name. Why would I stop this? Yeah. This generation they are addicted to it. And there will be a dark side. There will be a dark side, but I genuinely believe the Spirit is stirring because there is a massive corrective that is needed in the church, where we need to be more honest about our wounds, both what they are and how they have healed. And I typically find our churches doing one of 2 things that I think the millennials are bored with. One side of it is that we hide all the wounds and we never talk about it, and they're done with that. The other side of it, though, is to almost hold up our wounds as if they're still not transformed. Oh, I'm still just a sinner like you. No, they don't want that either. They want to know transformation's possible. They want to know that since you're not at the starting line like them, that there is hope for them to be someone different tomorrow. So I think we have to find this middle ground where we say, no, I have my wounds, and there's some of them I am not healed from, and let me be honest with you about them. But let me show you the 10 of them that I used to struggle with. I just don't anymore. Yeah. So for example, I've been open with students. I'm like, no, this isn't the norm for everybody. I said, but pornography's just never been a struggle for me. Right. I said, now I'm not saying I've never actually engaged it in high school. And there was even a couple times in college. Yes. I said, but it's just never been something that's had a hold on my heart. So the reason why that's important for me to tell you is this: it doesn't have to be every single person's struggle in order for it to be a real struggle, and in order for it to be able to be overcome someday. Yeah. An alcoholic needs to know that somebody can be sober. You know what I mean? They have to have that. And this generation wants both. Be honest with me. What have you really struggled with? But is it possible to not ever to struggle to overcome something? They want both. Yeah. I went to I when I first moved to Iola, this lady stops me after church and she says, "Hey, I need you
need you to go visit my boyfriend in jail. And I said, okay. And so I go and this is a, we had an old jail and it was rough. It was rough. In fact, there was a mural painted on the wall with food that they left there for a long time. I mean, it was real. It's a really kind of a twisted deal. And so
Okay.
I go in and I don't remember what they call it, but it's basically the big holding cell, and everybody is in this one holding cell, and there's a couple of other ones, more violent offenders that are over here, guys who are dealing with some mental health issues in another one, people who, maybe older or younger kind of set aside, but then just like this not general population like a prison, but general just grouping. And so I had to meet with this guy with other guys in the cell, and I'm just talking to him between the bars, and I'm visiting with him, and he's an older guy, and he's got this really rough. He's like, "Hey, yeah, man, I've been in jail for a long time," and I'm talking to him, and I said, listen, his name is Steve, and I said, Steve, I said, I can't help but just ask, do you have a relationship with God at all? I mean, is there any history of that anywhere in your? And he went into this long story about how his mom was kicked out of the Mormon church years ago and how this happened and this happened. And you don't know the background. You don't know,
Absolutely.
all this stuff. And I said, Steve, I said, here's the thing that you have to understand. I said, when you become a Christian, and I don't mean like a denominational tag, when you become a Christ follower,
Yeah.
you are transformed. You are made new. I said, there's things that happen. I said, number one, there is a peace that you get inside of your life. And it doesn't mean your circumstances have changed, but there's a peace that just happens inside of you because the Holy Spirit gives you this peace. And he's like, yeah. And I said, and Steve, I said, you get forgiveness of sins and you get the indwelling Holy Spirit. And I said, you begin to walk with Jesus. And he says, stop. Did you say forgiveness of my sins? And I said, yeah, Steve, I'm spitting Sunday school stuff here. Like this
Right.
let's move on. Let's move on into some, what's Steve going to do with his life? And he's like, so all of them?
Whoa.
I said, yeah, Steve, all of them. He said, my problem with God has never been that I don't believe. My problem with God is that I just wish he would leave me the hell alone. But what you're saying is different. He wants to forgive all my sins. Do you seriously mean all my sins? I said, yes, Steve, all of them. When I get out, I'll come see you.
No way.
We can sit and talk. It's like what you're saying when it comes to the hope side, which I think is a universal thing. I don't think it's just millennials, but I think universally, I think what you've put into words is that very same thing. I understand that I'm flawed, and I understand that you're flawed. What I need to see is a model of somebody who is flawed and then somehow changed and turned into something else. Is there a way to be new again?
Yes.
Is there a way to for me to renew my mind? Because of another conversation I had with a guy the other day, pornography. My sex life is so messed up because pornography has just ran rampant in my mind. And there's things that just do not entice me anymore because I've seen too much, Look, I said, I can speak from experience on this. Your mind can heal and you can go back to the simple things.
Yeah.
The simple things that really do stir you up. You can go back to the simple things, and it'll be made new again. And it's just, I think that's such a good point. I think that's such a good point, Shane, that we really do look for some sort of hope. But we get into that pattern of my brand of sin is weirder than yours.
Right. Yeah. Which one's worse?
Yeah. Like my brand of sin is real weird. And so I'm going to keep it to myself. I'm going to try to keep it. What you find out, and I think it was just this last Sunday, I asked the congregation, how many of you feel like your sin or the thing you struggle with is real weird and only isolated to you? Raise your hand. Listen, you are special. You are unique, just like everybody else. I mean, look around. Like we we are all the same. You know, we are all the same. Like we are all fighting through our thing. Alcohol has never been a thing for me. Never. You
Yeah.
know, I've never drank. I never cared to drink.
Yeah.
It was never a thing. But there's been a million other deals that ran my soul through the freaking gamut, you know? I mean,
Yeah.
from porn, you know, to image issues, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
how people
Yeah.
see you, not being able to manage your emotions, or me not being able to manage my emotions, you know, changing myself in different scenarios and
Yeah.
situations, you know, to be loved. And so I think when people hear that, I think that's a very inspiring thing. I think your book is going to be very hopeful for a lot of people to be able to read that and see that. It's interesting that you're 30, you say 36, 37?
Yeah.
Yeah.
36.
That you would pick up on that. And you're not exactly in the prime spot as a young professor to start spilling the beans now. Like you should probably wait till you get tenure.
Right.
And
Yeah, exactly.
you should probably
Until he can't be fired.
yeah, you should probably hold off until no. And I think that's what, and much kudos to Ozark for being in a place to be able to look at you and say, you know what, you keep doing what you're doing. You know, that's
Yeah.
you know, like my job description here at the church. This is the job description they gave me. Keep being yourself, preach away on Sunday, and do whatever you need to do to stay healthy. That's all we ask.
Daggone.
It's like,
Yeah. What place of business is this?
Exactly right. Like this is awesome. So yeah, I think you're 100% right. I think you're 100% right. That's really good. And I appreciate so much that you're there. Again, almost everybody I've talked to has kind of smashed the word authenticity when I've talked to them on the podcast. They just are bananas. Like there's no such thing as authenticity, and I understand they're coming from different angles. But I think that level of just being real, you know, in a place where you are with guys that are coming up, we're tired of seeing preachers go through that breakdown, you know,
Yeah, man.
that fear of watching these guys, you know, rise to success only to find out like the backstory is bad. Like things have been falling off they've been going off the rails for a long time, you know?
Well, and you know what's interesting is that it's wounds always produce different things, but they always culminate in a sin, and everybody's sin is different and unique because the wounds themselves are unique in the way you've experienced them. But what's fascinating is that where really the wheels, quote unquote, started to fall off for me. Like this is 5-6 years ago. This book is in the 5-6 years ago in the making, and it's when I finished my PhD. It's I finished my PhD and I got I pointing up to my wall because my wife made me put it on my wall. I don't even know where my other degrees are. She's like, we all sacrificed for that degree. You're gonna put it on the wall. And I'm like, all right, you know. But it's whenever I got it, the piece of paper, and she says, what's wrong? And I said, I thought it was gonna feel different. And she was like, well, what do you mean? I said, I don't even care. It just doesn't matter to me. And as I started to dig, that was so disturbing to me that I was like, I didn't know in my heart. I thought I was going to feel different. I came to the conclusion later, I thought that the PhD was going to heal something in me that was broken. I didn't know that. That's not why I was doing it. And so there's a part of me that has a hard time even looking at a PhD that I have. I'm going, that's actually a reminder of my wound more than it is an accomplishment. But the problem is that my manifestation, workaholism, worry, legalism, these types of things in many different settings they're celebrated and they're exalted and they produce fruit that we value. But I'm looking at people going, no, I am actually crying for help by working 80 hours a week. I'm crying for help when I'm doing these degrees, getting 5-6 degrees before I'm 31. Like this is a wound, this is a sin, but instead I keep getting promoted. And so there's a part of me where it's weird whenever I start to look at alcoholism or pornography, I relate to it, but it's not because, but their manifestation of brokenness is just one that is not well embraced. And so it becomes something that they hide more. But I'm like, I'm hiding behind PhD letters. It's the same thing. It's sin. And people are like, oh, worry, that's your sin. It was one of the things that chokes out the fruit in the parable of the seeds. Like, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just that it's something that if you worry the right way, then you can actually impress people. And if you do that, then you can get promoted. And then your sin becomes a part of who you are, and it starts breaking everyone around you.
Yeah. And what that does is it tells you that the way our culture is, even the church, that, uh, a very unhealthy mindset, because there's things we look at as taboo. And
Yeah.
probably in your experience, there were so many people who would get in behind you. Like, look at this young,
Yep.
he's an absolute anomaly. This kid has come up through the ranks, and he just keeps firing away. He just keeps producing. He just keeps doing it. Get behind him, get behind him, push. And there's these things that are so acceptable. It's like the drug addicts and the alcoholics who say stuff like, yeah, well, I wish mine wasn't this. I wish I had a
Yeah.
different problem. I wish I had, well, at least or the overeater. I heard an overeater guy say this one time. He's like, you know what? And his backstory is this beautiful backstory about his dad who was a meth addict and would come and pick him up. And the thing that his dad would do is he would take him to the cafe, and they would sit and they would just talk. And I don't know that his dad would eat, but the boy would eat. And so eating reminds him of a relationship with his dad, And so overeating. And so I'm sitting in a group with him, and he says, well, I just wish that mine had something else, like some sort of hold, some sort of hook in it. Because when you say I'm addicted to food, or I'm an overeater, like it seems like such a weak thing, And it's almost this idea that, like, some sin, like if you're on meth and you're jamming a needle in your arm, then that's different. Like
Right.
that's a different kind of sin. Like, he's hooked on. What's your problem? You just like food? Oh, are you serious? You're just a
Yeah.
carbs guy. Is that really your biggest? And that's not true. That's not true at all. Some are just more accepted. Some just kind of put us in a taboo category.
And that's where the concept of revelation reading us, to me, is so important. I was talking to my students about this today. I said, I believe this about every book, but the Bible is unique. It is inspired by the Spirit. And when you take it in, when you read it, you're not just reading it, it comes inside of you. I said, and we ingest it. I said, when you ingest anything else, you understand it changes you. I said, like alcohol, you ingest enough alcohol, it will change how you act, how you function. I said, because in a real sense, yeah, you're drinking alcohol, but in a real sense, it is transforming you. It is drinking you. And I said, the Bible is the same way. It's not just a matter of me knowing how to read the Bible, although that's important, but it's a matter of also being able to get yourself out of the way enough to have it read you, regardless of how small or how big you think the sin is. Yeah. It is still connected to a wound that, if left unaddressed, it will result in even the smallest. Like, I had a friend, or not a friend, a student, 5 or 6 years ago. Her mom had a splinter that got infected, and the prayer request was, because she didn't take care of it, it actually has caused her to go like close to being septic, and like her body was shutting down because of a splinter. It's like, I don't care how small the wound is. If it goes unaffected, it can affect all of you and everyone around you. Yeah. And so what we need to do is allow the Spirit to unearth us, all of us. And what we can't do is criticize our sin any more than we can criticize our overcoming of sin. Yeah. We need to be able to embrace the whole story. And I see this in Joseph, in Genesis. I see this in Jacob. It's one of the things I'm like, if our Bible was a fabrication of something that, is like, like, it's the worst way to fabricate anything.
Absolutely.
Like David, a man after God's own heart, killing people to marry a woman.
Right.
But one of the things I always tell people, I'm like, David was the king. He could have edited that out of the history. Yeah. But he didn't. Yeah. Because there's a part of vulnerability, which I know people don't like the word authenticity. And I'm like, all right, let's set that aside. Raw vulnerability, refusing to fight for yourself by keeping the secrets to yourself. Mm-hmm. There's something about this that actually all I'm wanting us to do is to step into the legacy of every person throughout the Bible that we admire. Yeah. It's like, and honestly, I think the overcoming the sin, I talk about this in the book, is what it means to be truly human. I preached a sermon here recently at Ozark, and my dominant thought was, stop sinning.
I was like, that's pretty original, Shane.
Yeah, I know. I was like, But what's funny was whenever I said it, there was like some giggles, and I was like, "No, I'm not kidding.
Right.
Stop sinning." And I said, because if we think that sinning, I said, we believe this: to be human is to sin.
Yep. You're right.
And here's the problem: if that is true, Jesus was never human. It's like, and if that's true, we are not fully saved. I said, if to be human is to sin, Adam and Eve then were not human until Genesis 3, which makes evil and death their creator and not God.
Yep.
I said, no, to sin is to be less than human. Sin is the imposter. It should not have a home. But here's the beautiful thing, is that we don't have to get vicious with it at the beginning. That's the tender part. But it is so come as you are, all broken. But the good news is that not only are you forgiven from sins, but that you don't even have to be controlled by them from here on.
Yeah.
And this is the early church. The early church, Athanasius, in his book on the Incarnation, he has this beautiful part where he's talking about the power of the church moving. And he says this, he says, adulterers come into the church and they leave faithful spouses. Liars come in and they leave truth tellers. Like, this is the power of the gospel.
Yeah, that's good.
I'm an adulterer and I get to come in, but then I leave and I'm not the same.
Yeah, that's good. We rebranded some church stuff here, and we went from, like the normal mission statement of, I'm probably going to insult somebody, and I don't mean to when I say this, but because I'm a little bit of a cynic on just I don't know why, but I just am. I'm just kind of a cynic when it comes to, cute little catchphrases and one word mission statements like go, grow, and show, or give, live, and thrive. Whatever it is, it's just and so what we did is we sat down and we mashed through, like, what are the things that we believe? What are the top 10 things? Okay, now what are the top 5 things? What are the things that are most important to us? What identifies us the most? So me and my cohort, Luke Bycroft, who I work with.
Oh yeah.
Sat down and we started putting it together. And one of the things the common theme that we kept coming up against was this idea of fighting, and this idea of putting our weakness on display. And that verse that I will beat my body and make it a slave. And that beat my body has got this powerful, which you probably know, powerful Greek picture to it. This idea to black my own eye and then shackle myself,
Mercy.
And so how do you put that in imagery? Because we decided we weren't going to go with words. We were just going to go with pictures. So instead of words, we just came with pictures. The only thing that we could come up with that would really put this in perspective and really kind of make an icon for a verse like that, a black my own eye, is brass knuckles.
Whoa.
And so we drew it all up. We sat down with the elders, put it in front of them, and said, this is the do or die. Like, go back to the drawing board, or, put it on everything. Like, this is, so it kind of created a weird tension, because these are elders, and of a Christian church, and they sat and they looked at it and they kind of went through it and put it on a crest. It's a shield. And we quartered it, and then we put the 4 things, and it brings some other things in, but the 4 things, the last one down in the corner is brass knuckles. And so they pass it around the room and they're all looking at it. Very, very stern, serious men, who enjoy an Enneagram 7 in their life,
Right.
And they like the enthusiasm that brings, but they also understand it needs to be sidelined sometimes. Like, I think maybe too many turnovers, buddy. You're gonna have to get you off the court in just a minute, And great assists, great on defense, just too many turnovers. Right. And so I'm sitting in this meeting thinking, what's gonna happen? And one of them says, "You want to expound on these brass knuckles?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, just my own personal fight, with addiction. And I said, that verse, that talks about that I beat my body and I make it a slave. I said, just the general idea of shackle myself down, take this version of me and leash it and put it away and say, there's a part of me that needs to be tied down on a regular basis. I need to throw my elbow over the car seat sometimes because the guy in the back's like, let me drive. And like, we've seen you drive, right? This guy needs a quick one,
Right.
And I said, brass knuckles just kind of represent, this is the discipline that we have in our church, that we want to face hard things, that we want to push against the stuff that's in our life and just be honest with where we are, that porn was a thing that wrecked my marriage for a long time, and we were able to put it back together. Porn was a thing that wrecked ministry for me for a long time. And God came in and healed that and put that back together and changed the dynamic of our church. Brass knuckles are kind of close to me, and they slide it back across, put it back in front of us, and they say, looks good. Get the banners made, get them hung up. Looks good. And I look at Luke and I'm like what? I did, like, this is the part where the 1 needs to look at the 7 and say, no,
Yeah.
I need you to say, like, this is not a good decision. This is really gonna. And he said, it's right. It's just right. So in our sanctuary are these banners that go down the side, and one of them is brass knuckles, that hang on the side. And when people walk in, as soon as we had them hung up, this very sweet, upstanding, very finished, polished woman stops me on the way in the door, and she says, "Excuse me, Jared." And I said, "Yes, ma'am." And she says, "Are those brass knuckles on the wall?" "Yes, ma'am, they are." And she just looked at me. She goes, "Okay, just curious."
Yeah, I bet. There's got to be more.
And that was it. That was it. Not another word. And I was preaching on that one because we were introducing them one by one. And I was preaching on that one that day. So went in and I preached and talked about it. Man, it was just like, yeah, that makes 100% sense. Yeah, that's exactly what we need to do. So I think that's such a powerful idea for you to take your thoughts, especially journal type thoughts, put them in a book and set them out in front of people. And it's kind of like our conversation that we had on the phone the other day. You were talking about the radio interview. What you're doing with that?
No, and that's where, referring to that radio program, he asked me at one point, he was like, you're so vulnerable in this. Do you kind of feel like you're the last, I forgot how he said it, was something like some pigeon, something. The idea was that you're going to be shot out of a thing and people are going to shoot at you. That was the idea. And I was like, okay. And honestly, I just told him, I said, listen, diving deep into my own wound was so incredibly painful and the darkness was so overwhelming. I honestly don't know what they could say that could make me feel worse than whenever I was keeping it in the dark.
Yeah.
It's just, there's a part of this where the pain that you go through of bringing something out of the darkness into the light, it is real pain. It is not something to be trifled with. It's not something to truncate or to minimize. It is intense pain. But it's the healing on the other end that ultimately makes the pain worth it. And that's where I love the fact that Jesus resurrects, but he still has his wounds, but they're scarred now. And so I talk about this in the book too, where it's like, and what scars celebrate is, number one, they celebrate a wound that was so deep that it actually leaves a mark on you forever. Yeah. But number two, the scar celebrates that the healing of that deep wound is in Christ. And so, and this actually is the way that I didn't realize this, but the more I've reflected on the book, I'm going, this is actually the way I preach too. As I preach by basically saying this, I'm a Eugene Lowry, huge Eugene Lowry homiletical plot fan.
Yeah.
But it's because I think it's what stories do. What stories do is they bring us into what are all common amongst all of us, a struggle. Everybody, like when I hear brass knuckles, I'm going, oh no, as a one, I know what it's like to beat my body into submission.
Yeah.
And I do it in the way in which it doesn't want us to do it.
Yeah.
I do it in a way in which that's actually unfair. I distort myself by how much I beat myself into submission. But I'm going but whenever I preach, what I'm trying to do is empty myself of myself to sit where they are and ask this question. How do I get them to experience this revelation from God, not just the book, but whatever it is that's coming from the text, the way that I experienced it? And so a lot of my sermons are homiletical plot because I'm through questions, I'm actually telling the story of how I came to this transformative thought that has made me different. And I want them to have the same aha moment. I want them to have the same struggle. I want them to have their equilibrium upset, not just as a means by which I can, wax eloquently or throw out rhetorical, patterns, but because ultimately I'm going, I don't want you just to hear the word. I want you to experience it.
Yeah.
In a way in which you feel the pain I felt and you connect it in parts of your stories that I never will understand completely, but we can come together in a similar wound. And I feel like then in some sense, then the preaching experience is just that. It's an experience where I'm demonstrating to you how a wound has been exposed and healed in my life, and it will connect in yours. I mean, that's really how the book is written too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I know any other way to connect with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. But I think you're right. I mean, I think that's a very honest thing. I mean, the Nativity says the same thing.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly right.
I mean, the Nativity says the very same thing. I'm here and I'm like you. And in a reciprocal sense, now it's time for you to become like me.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's
which is so crazy because I never once feel, whenever I feel that Jesus comes and becomes flesh, I never feel judged by him because he's so holy.
Yeah. It's that verse in Romans that I always go back to. Do you not know that it's God's kindness that brings you to repentance?
Yeah.
And it's like, I thought it was because he was angry. Like, I'm repenting because I don't want to get in trouble. Like, no. Like, you got doted on. And because you got doted on, you fell to your knees, crushed, and said, the weight of this is too heavy. And it's like, what planet are we on? Like, how does that happen? The weight of goodness,
And because we are so accustomed to the darkness, it feels like pain. What is beautiful and tender and joy, it feels like pain. Because light, when it shines into your eyes after you've been in darkness for so long, you can't help but squint. Everything's blurry, and it feels like you're being punished, and you're not. Yeah. It is the path to healing, but a lot of times we just mistake it as the path to further punishment.
Yeah, which I think explains, which I think explains why some of the interactions that we have, and you even talk about this in the book, some of the interactions that we have with other people, it becomes this. Oh, so you're a Christian, like, and you begin to feel the recoil because of, listen, the Holy Spirit in your life and just you. That's the thing we pray in the mornings with my family. Let us go and be a light to the people in our life today. And when we pray, it doesn't matter if it's my youngest daughter, Brooklyn, if it's Allie, if it's my wife, Kate, whoever prays, we always come back to that line. Let us be a light. And in that, sometimes it manifests as, so I was a light today and things went really crappy, I was a light today and things went really, really good, and you see that same thing when we encounter other people and, they hear this about you, they find out about you. I got this story right before I got on here. My buddy called and he says, hey, have you ever said something really douchey and felt like an idiot, and daily, and he's like, and he's like, he said, I don't know why this I don't know why I did this. He said, but I walked in the gas station. The guy's like, man, sure is beautiful outside today, isn't it? And I said, this guy says, yeah. I said, it's beautiful out. And he's like, man, God sure does a lot of really cool stuff with the weather. I mean, just changes everything. This is a strange exchange anyway that I'm overhearing as he's telling me about this. And he's like, yeah. And he said, and my buddy, which this is a little out of character, but he just, I don't, something was going on with him. And he says, yeah, but it's not going to be nearly as beautiful as heaven. He said, and you could hear the record scratch, like in the like everybody was like, what? He said, I just was like, he said, now I can't go in that gas station for a long time. He's like,
come on.
Because there's that thing, like it, when it's there and that's where your mind is and that's where your heart is, it really does cause some discomfort in a lot of places. So, so talk to me about a couple of things. This podcast is created to encourage the number of ministers that are out there who get in that grind of, you have the luxury of working with a team and I have the luxury of working with a team, and a lot of these guys don't. One of the guys from the Kansas, Nebraska Southern Baptist Convention. I was talking to him on the phone a while back, and he said something like 85% of our churches in Kansas and Nebraska, the ministers there are bivocational.
Wow.
Which means lack of resources, lack of
Yeah.
time off. I mean, they're balancing other jobs on top of
God.
trying to. And I thought, you know what, if there were resources, free resources that would put them in the company of, or put these people in the company of these guys and let them just drink in some of the stuff that's going on, some encouragement of some sort. So that was kind of a helpful thing. My morbid curiosity was the first thing. The second thing was, man, I think people need more encouragement. I know I do, I mean, words of affirmation mean a lot to me, and so when you hear something like that, and you know that there's a number of guys that are out there by themselves struggling through ministry, doing the thing, what kind of words of encouragement can you bring to those guys who are going to hear this?
Yeah, let me actually say a couple of things, and then and I hope none of it comes across as pandering, because that's not my goal. My heart, though, is actually the very same as yours. My first 10 years of located ministry were actually, I was that person. I did not have a team. I was at a church of 60, and I would save up all of my budget to go to one conference a year, and then I would come home depressed because I didn't have the money to put anything into play that we even talked about. And so it felt like an island. And it's one of the reasons why I've gotten special permission from Ozark to record every single one of my lectures at Ozark, and I put them on my website for totally free, audio, video. I have hundreds of hours from the Book of Acts, the Book of Mark, Matthew, Revelation, and I told them, I was like, I refuse to take money for this because I have been that small town minister, and I did not have money for further education or for further for curriculum. One of the things I love is Ozark now is putting out these next level videos, and they are free, and they are high quality videos. And we literally spend thousands of dollars on these videos, and I love that Ozark says, and we will give them away for free. So the next level videos and stuff like that. So my first thing is I would say is I feel it, man, and I understand, and I want you to know that you're not alone, that we are working for you to try to make sure that you're not alone. The second thing, though, that I would say, though, is this: the greatest resource that you have is your own story. Part of the things that I fell into the temptation as a small church or as a lonely minister is to think that what I needed was the right curriculum, what I needed was the right lighting, what I needed was, and this would attract the people. That's not what will attract the people. What will attract the people is a transformed person in front of them. And if I could give the greatest encouragement I can give, and it's not even going to sound like encouragement, but it is. And the encouragement is dive as deep into your own wounds as you possibly can on behalf of your church. Go to counseling, save your money from those conferences and go to counseling. Dive into tools like the Enneagram. Why? Because I genuinely believe we can only take people as far as we ourselves have traveled.
100% agree.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where I'm going, and matter of fact, this is I didn't realize this until a couple of weeks ago. So I've been saying it everywhere. I've been so excited. I'm going, oh my gosh. Like it's Matthew, whenever Jesus says, the greatest commandment is to love Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. But then in Matthew's gospel, he says, and the second is like the first. And I'm always like, how is there anything like the first? But then he does something really weird. He says, love your neighbor as yourself. And so then I stopped and so a couple of weeks ago, I started working in reverse, and I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't know how to love myself, I won't know how to love my neighbor, and then I won't know how to do the first greatest commandment. So how do I love myself? By diving deep into my wounds. By refusing to allow my wounds to dictate how I see myself, view myself. And what I found is that has created a deeper compassion in me for complaints that I get at the small churches that feel very personal more than they feel constructive. I even had a minister ask me recently, how do you get criticized so much and still love the church? And my response was in diving in my own story, I've realized broken people break people. And so I know how I've broken people, and I know how I've been broken, and it gives me compassion in those moments. had I not dove into my own story, I could not be the minister that I am. And so my encouragement to everybody out there is, number one, you're not alone. I want to give you free stuff because I know what it's like. But number two, I'm going, the best resource you can get is not on my website, and it's not at a conference, and it's not even in a book. It's diving into your own story and realizing that transformation is what it is that should compel not just you. And this is my definition for your job description of you be healthy.
Yeah.
I think there's such deep wisdom. That's what they're telling you. Dive into
Yeah.
your story, be healthy, because the healthier you are, the more you'll be able to help those around you.
Yeah. You're 100% right, man. I appreciate that. Appreciate that a bunch. Shane, I have a feeling that we could do this for hours on end.
And I probably wouldn't even notice, and I wouldn't care.
Yeah.
I love
I'm looking at the clock and I'm like, good night. Like we did not carve out enough time for this. This is too bad. So, would you be willing to come do this again?
Heck yeah, bro. This has been a blast. It'd be my honor.
Yeah, this would be really cool. I appreciate all your encouraging words and remarks, and I appreciate where you are in ministry and the people that you're getting to serve. You know, I was a student at Ozark, and I remember one of the things that I really fought with was, man, is there anybody here who's going to let me into that? I need behind the curtain. You know, I need behind the curtain. And you know, Brian Brubaker. Gerald Griffin.
Yeah.
Guys that would let me into that place and would be honest. And still to this day, you know, I talk to Griff on a regular basis because, you know, he's just an honest, just a real guy. And there's something hopeful about that thing. And go back to that same theme of how in the world do you get in this spot and still somehow carry the traits of, look, I'm a guy who's broken and busted, and I'm on my way to follow Jesus, and you're more than welcome to come. Wish you would, and it's going to be fun, and he's going to rearrange our furniture, and it's going to be terrible, and it's going to be great, you know? Yeah. And that's really cool. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate all that you've done. I appreciate the work you've put in, and appreciate you wrestling with your wounds like you have. It's very, very inspiring. And so on behalf of everybody who's going to get to hear this, thanks for doing this, and we'll connect again. My pleasure. Soon. Yeah.
Thank you, Jared. Man, I appreciate you too, brother.
Yeah. No trouble. All right, buddy. I'll let you go. Have a good day. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. See you, buddy.
See you, pal.